All right. Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the ItCast, Real Talk on Sex, and I am your host, Nika Sherelle. The ItCast is our community outreach podcast that increases diversity in conversations on health and sexuality. Through this work, we are creating a world where all people feel loved, honored, and respected. We have some events coming up this season. You can join us at The Chase coming up November 4th through 7th. You can learn more about The Chase at chase.pet. We also have our Global Sexual Health and Freedom Summit. We are going to be doing that February 4th and 5th of 2023. Early bird tickets are coming soon. Those will be out October 15th. So go ahead and go to sexhealthsummit.com so you can RSVP and get more information. If you would like one-on-one coaching from me, I would love to work with you. Please go to my link tree and book a free connection session. And I'd love to have a conversation to see how I can support. Also, ask us anything. We love getting your questions. We love hearing from you. So pop them in the chat. Feel free to submit the Q&A form. You can do it completely anonymously. Just let us know what you want to know. All right. You can get access to our bonus content on our Patreon. There you can find our green rooms and our after chats and any other awesome content we come up with. Also, you can get discounts to some of our events and even get into some for free. Just go subscribe to our Patreon. All right. So subscribe to this YouTube channel and share with your community. Let's go ahead and dive in. So this week's topic is real talk on healing the soul through kink. Today in the booth, we have Seven and Dani of Sabersmyth. Sabersmyth is a queer-owned and operated leather maker based in Oregon, specializing in gear, garments, and lingerie that affirm the sensory needs of sensitive people. Each piece is made to last a lifetime with proper care and strives to deliver on quality, functionality, and beauty. Their attention to detail prioritizes comfort for the user, making pleasure accessible to even the most sensitive, non-neurotypical queer. They recognize that leathers are not simply accessories, but creations with the potential to be spiritually bonded, gender and sexually affirming companions. All right, Seven, Dani, come on the show.
Thank you so much for that introduction.
Absolutely. Hello. How are you today?
I'm doing fabulous.
So go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you chose to do the show.
Yeah. So about myself, so my name's Dani. I've been really pretty involved in kink. It was a slow transition for me throughout my life, but it's become a pretty big part of how I express myself in relationships, and also a huge part of how I do a lot of my own personal spiritual growth. And and we've gotten really involved in the last couple of years. Me and Seven have made that our full-time business is facilitating the kink lives of others. And so, when you talk to us about having the opportunity to talk about what we've been, spending all of our time talking about with each other, with you, I definitely jumped at that opportunity.
Nice. Thank you. Getting to sit and hear your passion and why you're doing this work is just so incredible. So I'm really grateful to have you here. Seven, would you like to say anything?
Sure. I'm Seven. I use they, them pronouns. And I think, I guess how I got introduced to the world of kink was mostly around coming from being highly sensitive myself and kind of finding out how that influences intimacy needs and experiences. And I can say that succinctly looking back at the journey and with the framing that we have now, but it's been exploratory. So I think what I love about, your podcast is that you're creating a platform to have these conversations of from lots of different people around their experiences around intimacy, sex, kink, all of that good stuff. And I'm just very pleased that we're here to share.
Thank you. I love it. You mentioned a few things, and accessibility and exploration. Accessibility is incredibly important in the work that we're doing here, because allowing people to understand their bodies and evolve, and see what's available for them, I think it's really incredible. And so providing access to anyone who's going through anything, any shape, any form, is incredible. And exploration. You said that, and I'm like, yes, it's all about exploring. Like what works, what doesn't, like what moves you, what, like the things now in my life are not what I thought it was supposed to be based on the archetype that I had. It was like, this is very normative. And I'm like, nah, that's not how I get down or enjoy getting down. So yeah.
Actually, we're in San Francisco now, getting ready to be at Folsom, and we're staying with a really good friend of ours who's quite vanilla, actually. And we always laugh because he will kind of show things that we've made and like kinky stuff to him, and he's like, that's about sex? Like, I don't get it.
It's like, where's the sex? I don't like, how does them wearing a muzzle facilitate sex?
Yeah, and to us, we're like, isn't it obvious?
Yeah, like nobody can see your expression and see how you're reacting to them. That's really hot, right?
And imagine the freedom, of not having to express externally what you're feeling inside. And,
yeah. And like I'm autistic, and a lot of that, the way that it expresses itself for me is around both around like needing a lot of like reassurance in somebody's like expression, and like being very like exuberantly over expressive. And so like kink for me, like when I mentioned the muzzle thing, it's like that's been a really interesting thing for me to play with, both as me wearing a muzzle and as my partner wearing a muzzle, because like when I'm engaging with somebody, it can be really hard for me to stay in the moment if I get insecure because they're not being expressive enough with things. And that can be like a lot of pressure to put on a partner, like you need to be more expressive for me. Yeah. And so to like experiment with those types of things, like, to play with like, what does it look like if I can't see your face? Like, does that change things for me? And there's some like real self-love that I've found through that, and some self-acceptance around like what my needs are because of that sort of play.
Yeah. I'm hearing that there's safety, like there's a whole different level of comfort and ability to be with people without I guess I'm hearing like fear and concern, perhaps, about what things might mean. I know for myself, like I have severe social anxiety. And so like if someone's mood, like if they just get quiet, I'll be like, oh my God, what did I do? I fucked up. Like
Yeah, and I mean, kink is a language, a series of languages to navigate that kind of experience and to kind of equalize between two or more, people's different internal worlds. With the example you just shared, like I am one who will go quiet, and like if you might ask me a question, it might take me a few minutes to get back to you. And for somebody with social anxiety, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
But through exploring and using these tools to kind of dive into your own psyche and understand what's going on there, then we can kind of communicate like, this is what's going on in my head. I don't hate you. I'm thinking.
You're not allowed to do that.
Yeah. And I think something that that Kink has really given me, and actually it's really funny, we were seeing a couples therapist for a while, and like they were relating to that one of their sort of things they do a lot is help vanilla people understand concepts that are within Kink that are just really helpful concepts. Things like safe words, like pre-negotiate that when you say this, it means this.
Yeah.
And
Communication.
yeah, and like the kind of negotiation and communication that is so common within Kink.
Yeah.
It's just really helpful stuff in relationships, you know, like just being able to be really open around like when you do this thing, like it affects me in this way, and we can negotiate how we show up for each other in those ways.
Yeah. No, that's very real. And I love the way that you're framing it. You mentioned earlier around like the self-love. And like that's kind of like discovering that, and a little bit of where it begins, because like then that leads to the communication and the being able to negotiate and create what works well for you. I think it's really potent. I had an experience recently. So I mentioned the social anxiety, and I was at a dinner party and I made a joke. And then like minutes after I made the joke, I was like, that was really rude. Why did I say that? That's horrible. Everybody here hates me. I'm so embarrassed. And like, and like I shrank for, I don't know, like 5 or 6 minutes at the table, and I didn't know what to say. It was super fucking awkward. And then I went to apologize, and they were like, what are you talking about? And I was like, oh, that's my anxiety talking. And like, I took a deep breath and I was like, got it. And when I was able to share that with them and like really kind of bring us all on the same page, they're like, oh yeah, it's good that you're able to talk about it. And thank you for sharing. And like immediately the feeling of anxiety like went away. And then I kept trying to be like, where is it? Like trying to find it. And it was dissipated. And that was really, really powerful to like have that new space. So yeah.
Really freeing, and what a blessing, to be with a group of people where you felt like you could express that and clear the air for yourself.
Yeah. I've had a similar I had a similar need come up, and like similarly like within one of my Kink dynamics, there's just like a lot of pre-agreed kind of like check-ins, just like, are we still cool? And knowing that I do have that like anxiety that builds up in me, just to have that like pre-agreed, like, do you have space for this? Like, do you have space to affirm me when I need it? And those kinds of agreements are things that I learned through that Kink mindset.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Previously we talked about emotional consent, and so like that space of, are you able to hold what I'm going through in your space, in how you engage in this type of play or what comes up for you. And I remember one of my partners was like, I got to a point where I was feeling like really emotionally invested, and I was like, oh, like you need to know this. Like, and like my experience with catharsis and all these different things when it comes to Kink, not everybody has that experience, but like being able to communicate and like say, like what you need and what works, it keeps everybody safer, like those check-ins, everything. So I really appreciate it when like we kind of noted to that.
Can you remind me what we were talking about when we were talking about emotional consent? Or we can work on remembering together.
Let's just go with that.
On the spot. I love it.
But yeah, no, I mean, just whatever, whatever comes up when you think about that, because like it came up in the conversation around informed consent.
Mhm.
And like one of the things is like we talk about it in the medical field, like, okay, here's this info, sign this paper. And then we talk about it like, in the realm of the kink community where it's like, having the negotiations and like what works, pleasure negotiation, different things like that. But like in that space, informing your partner of all the things that they may need to know is something that gets
Yeah.
skipped over.
Right.
Yeah.
Not just like here are the acts, ACTS that that I'm okay with, that I want, but like here's sort of the emotional fallout that we could run into. Or, you know, are you consenting to holding me after we have this scene, knowing that things could come up that we have no clue about until it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the thread we were talking about, was like that when you go into any scene, whether it's like an impact scene or a degradation thing, or whether on one side of it or the other, you're thinking of it as a highly physical thing or a highly like mental emotional thing, you can run into things that you're not expecting. So like, I think that's a huge part about that informed consent, is like having the agreements and the negotiations for what happens when things do inevitably go off the rails.
Mm-hmm.
Because as much as you do pre-plan, the whole point of this is play. You don't really know what's going to come up when a certain word is used on you that maybe reminds you of being bullied as a kid or something. Yeah, that could be a thing.
And that drop and then the rehealing kind of after that trauma or emotional, challenge is like the healing experience that we go for in kink. Like back to your dinner party example, I imagine the relief of your social anxiety was so much more because you dropped and then you came back up.
Yeah.
It was cleared fresh.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you were saying about like there are things that come up, like you get into the space, you get into, the scene, you into the scene, and then you run into like this that came up and not expecting it. That happens in what I'll call normative sex too, like vanilla sex. But like normative, like it's easy to stumble across those things and then like push past them and kind of pretend like they didn't happen. So I think, just kind of correlating those two worlds, because I want to make sure people aren't, this doesn't mean this in that situation, but really these things are all interconnected.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying really touches on something I hear a lot when I talk about either kink or poly, because to me, they're very related. And there's a lot of sort of like, but it takes so much work and like you have to do so much. And my thought has always been like, this work is work that just makes relationships better. Like, so if you have one partner or four, to know yourself and to know what your insecurities are and to know how to like work with other, like all the stuff that's really required to make that work, it works the same in one relationship. And all the stuff, all the communication that and care that kink requires is all stuff that just makes relationships better.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a comment in the chat that just fits so perfectly. As someone outside of the kink community, I'm seeing that kink offers an education in great communication in every area of life.
It can.
It can, yeah. And back to like, what is kink? But kink is, in my mind, not that different from like sexual exploration. It's just a different categorization, umbrella of sort of experiences. And like you can push boundaries with vanilla sex and discover edges for yourself and explore things that have either cultural or emotional, weight behind them, that you're intentionally picking apart and experiencing. So I really like that you are pointing out that we're not just talking about kink here. Kink is the the entry point.
Yeah.
And there are many entry points to this kind of depth of communication and breakdown of your psyche, really, is what we're talking about.
I think it's interesting that you brought up, like, even what is kink.
Yeah.
Like,
What was that? Sorry.
I was saying, I think that it's interesting they brought up, like, even like, what is kink? Like, we didn't even really define kink, like, when we just started talking about this. Like, kink can be so different for everybody. And I know people who like really are like staunchly, I am not kinky, but like they love to get spanked. And it's like, okay, I don't know how we agree what kinky is. And like for me, definitely like watching a machinist video on YouTube where somebody's like grinding a perfect gear.
Ooh.
That's so sexual for me.
Nika, your face, yes.
I was in art school, which every phrase starts with that. It's the best phrases. So we were looking at tools one day, and there was this drill, like, I don't know, it was a drill that had like 4 handles on it. And I was like, hardware porn. Like literally, it was just, there was nothing, just a drill. And I was like, I also have tool envy. I was
a good tool in your hand feels, I hope you can come by our booth and hold one of our paddles that we've been making, because for me, I really do fetishize the way things like feel in my hands. Mm-hmm. And so that's been the kind of rabbit hole that I've been going down. And I matched our paddle handles to a cast iron pan, because it was just like, it was that feel I wanted, that like I can hold something that weighs way too much, but like I can hold it. Yeah. So I hope you can come by and feel that, because that to me is so sensual.
And everyone out there, Sabersmyth and I will be at the Folsom Street Fair this weekend. If you're in the Bay Area, if you're local, if you're coming out to visit, definitely come and check out the work that we're doing, and see what's available in this conversation. You mentioned where your booth is. Do you want to share that so people can find you?
Sure. Yeah, we'll be on Folsom Street at the corner of Folsom and 9th.
Yeah.
Look for the booth with lots of little like greenery, gags, and leather.
Yeah, and we're going to be doing, we've actually been really focused on doing strap-ons lately, and going back to kind of like the way things feel in those, that being so like so sensual and sexual in itself, like the way that a piece of equipment feels. We've been really focused on making strap-ons that feel like a part of your body. And so to do that, we've created this fitting harness that like you can dial in every aspect of how it fits on you. And then we can get the numbers and like make something to you that fits just like that. So we're doing a fitting booth tomorrow.
Nice.
Sunday.
Nice. Yes, Sunday the 25th. And you'll be able to find my booth at 11th and Howard, and it'll be easy to recognize. I'm the dick gun chick, so look for the dick gun. You'll find me.
We'll have to do. We have a wall that we've made that has like lots of greenery and a bunch of like styrofoam heads that have ball gags on them. And we made like this big, like nice sign in gold letters that just says "shut up." It'd be really fun to do a little photo shoot of the dick guns in front of the "shut up" sign.
Ooh, okay. Ideas. We'll talk about those later. Love it. Okay, so in the conversation though, I love what you were pointing to, Seven, about like pushing your edge. So like there's that, and it comes up a lot. Like I think about when I went to my acting class, and it's like I don't want to, but like pushing past that and like feeling what's available is super important. And I also correlated, you mentioned the edge, and also we've talked about the drop. And so like I'd never thought about like literally going over the edge before, but that's just how I related to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I think in the work that we do, I think what's most important is that we know that like the people who are our customers, our community, in exploring kink, like we are pushing those edges, but to push an edge safely and pleasurably, it has to come from a place of comfort and safety, and especially so, you know, for some people who are autistic, neurodivergent, highly sensitive, whatever, you know, have PTSD, whatever it is going on in your psyche, like pushing edges is still healthy and exciting, and also more risky.
Yeah.
So the comfort factor, psychologically, physically, is just super, super important.
Yeah. The accessibility aspect of it, you know, like looking at neurodivergence, but also looking at, like you mentioned, physicality, and, you know, like the idea of having an invisible disability, or like actually like needing a mobility aid, or needing, you know, just different ways to access what's available in pleasure, and like you said, in a safe, like safely, you know, pushing your edges in a way in which you can trust what's happening. I think that's hugely important. I love what this is bringing to that. So sorry, I don't want to move too fast.
Go for it.
The drop. So I don't know that everyone out there actually knows what a drop is. And so I'm curious if we could talk just a little bit more about what that looks like.
I remember you talking about it very
Oh, really? What did I say?
That's a great question. Well, I guess for me, there's basically a high that, you know, personally, there's a high that I'm seeking, that I'm riding, that I'm clutching onto, that we're, you know, that's kind of what I'm searching for in my explorations, is that flow state, feeling of being like surfing. You know, I caught the wave and we're going, and this is awesome. Holy shit. And then the wave is over, you know, there's like a limit to the energy that we can put into that flow state. So inevitably there's a, you know, an end to every like pleasurable experience, or I don't want to say an end, but a down regulation back to your kind of default state. And comparatively, it feels like a drop in your endorphins and your excitement and your bodily sensations. And although it's not necessarily, you know, it's not bad to come back down to earth. We need to be on earth. We need to be grounded, to, you know, function and to incorporate our learnings and to, you know, function basically.
We can't always.
But it's hard. It's hard to make that transition sometimes, and it can bring up, you know, emotional weight. And in that process of dropping back down, equalizing back to standard or like default state, there a lot can come up, either in your body, in your mind. You might be reflecting on your experience. You might just be sad that it's not happening anymore. And I think with like a very sort of loving hold of that experience, the drop can be just a part of your integration. And that can be, as valuable as the high. The aftercare, cuddling, or whatever it looks like for you, where you rode your wave and you're like, whoa, that was really cool. It has the potential, to be really great or really hard.
Thank you. Yeah.
Or really unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be in the middle of a scene and be looking across the street and the house catches on fire. And
Yes.
that can bring up stuff that there's no way you could have possibly, that literally happened to me. And it months later, me and that partner is still kind of processing the things that brought up. And it's actually the healing has come in the months following, like us holding space for each other for the feelings that brought up.
Can you say you just dropped fire?
So sorry. Yeah, I think that actually goes right to
I was gonna ask.
Yeah. And trigger warning, I'm going to talk about fire because I actually have been in a structured fire and have some PTSD around that. And I was, having a scene, and literally like I was on the third floor of our house, and the cross was facing the window, so they could look out over the valley and see the trees, very romantic flogging. And but then it got super intense, and then all of a sudden they were just they were like, is the house across the street on fire? And it was. And next thing you know, I'm calling 911, and it's a whole thing. And we were just life, it in a kink scene, oftentimes real life seems very far away. I think that's part of what makes it work. You're in a deeply, possibly internal space or connected space, and everything else is very far away. So to have that real life just be in my face, and something that was so triggering, it was very, very jarring, to say the least.
Yeah, it kind of snatches you back into reality in a space and a time in which that's not actually, I don't know, that's ever really healthy to be snatched anywhere. But the healing. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so, and that's one of those ways that kink, you and really, all sexual encounters, and like I said, what is kink? Because I think sex is pretty kinky. I think marriage is pretty kinky. I think marriage is hella kinky. Okay?
Power dynamics.
Totally. You're the only person I'm ever gonna have sex with ever again in my life. Not some crazy chastity play. So I don't what is kink, but within kink, when you're going deep and those things, those unexpected things, it's the like I said, the months after, how you hold space for whatever's happened, for whatever unexpected thing came up, that makes the relationship, that builds the trust, that deepens the relationship in a way that can facilitate healing in yourself. I mean, the trust that I've built up with Seven, and the space that they're able to hold for me because of the kink play that we've had, has allowed me to go so deep in my personal healing in ways that I didn't even know were there.
Yes, that's a deep breath moment. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It's really beautiful, the conversation around healing. And just for people out there listening, we did an episode on aftercare with Midori, and you can go see all the ways in which things may come up for you. I love we've been talking about the drop in the emotional state, and you mentioned PTSD. and like trauma coming up. And we kind of like noted to this just a little bit around like catharsis and energy and consent, but like the healing aspect, it's really deep. Like the places that you can allow yourself to go to, the places that you avoid. I've had a lot of really healing experiences inside of the world of kink that I just never saw coming. Never, not once, it even crossed my mind that that would come up. And it did. And so like to be able to be held and healing in that process afterwards, whatever it looks like. Sometimes it looks like smashing things with a baseball bat. Like it's different. And so yeah, if you could share a bit more about like the healing aspect and like what, I don't know, the trauma, the healing, anything that comes up for you there.
Well, I think, speaking personally, a lot of the sort of kink play that I kind of value the most and that is the most healing for me is the stuff that gives me a sensation that I need on some level. Like there's a depth of feeling and of like pressure or I'll just give an example. I love being pressed and squeezed really hard, like as hard as you can. And there's really no limit, to like how hard it can go. And I think that it's just incredibly regulating for me. And I think it comes from sort of a lifetime of being overwhelmed, overstimulated, and managing that all the time. Managing what environments I'm in, managing how I'm, showing up in those spaces, and trying to keep tabs on my overwhelm. Like my senses can just be on fire a lot of the time. And things like deep pressure, it calls attention to only one place in your body. And it can feel like, all of the anxiety, all of the tension is just being smushed out. And that's a total reset for me. So that's like kind of a small example of like, I would call that kinky for myself. I can't really explain why. And if I had to explain like why that was sexy, I don't know if I could, but I know that it's kind of in that line of like a pleasurable sensation that's also healing in the way that it's like fixing something that was uncomfortable, and something that was in the background, that we're just kind of holding up into the light and saying, hey, let's look at this and let's crush it. Sense.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, kink is a mindset, and it's a mindset of exploration. And I mean, just if we're being really, really honest right now, I've been going through a lot of gender exploration, and I have an Oculus, and I've been able to watch POV porn from a pussy having perspective, and and it's been really foundational for me for my like gender healing exploration. I really like it's something I considered from a kink perspective, from a like, wouldn't that be kind of crazy and like hot? And I was like, wow, this just feels natural. Like, maybe there's something there, And yeah, like that's the kind of like, I mean, I was raised in a really conservative place as like a very like queer, like, non-gender conforming, but like pretty conforming because that was safe. And, like pansexual, whatever. And so because my gender and sexuality is so fluid, I really defaulted towards like being very like cis heteronormative because it just was like easier and it was less scary. Like with all my social anxiety, it wasn't like just easy for me to be an outsider. So, but like being able to like much later, I'm 40 now, and like being able to explore these things for the first time because of that kink perspective, because of that like play with what is sexuality, play with what is like sensuality to you, like, and to not have something be your identity because you do it once, because you have a concept of like play means play means to get to try something and having few consequences of results of it. Like, so it's like to play with something means to be able to try something on and be like, is this me? I don't know.
Yeah. You pointed to a few things around eroticism. I'm like, I get the experience for me that it's intimacy and excitement. Like that, I don't know, that rush, like it could kind of go anywhere. It doesn't have to result in orgasm. Like it could just be that, like, in and of itself, a really beautiful experience. Yeah.
A really thumpy bass noise.
A thumpy what?
Bass noise, like a rave speaker, to me is like the most sexual thing I've ever experienced.
Oh my gosh.
Having all of that like percussive vibration going through.
Yeah, like running through the body.
Yeah.
Before we move forward, you mentioned the phrase Oculus. I think it took me a minute to figure out that's a VR headset. Is that accurate?
Yeah. The like Facebook VR headset.
Got it. Okay.
I mostly play Beat Saber, which is a video game where you hold swords and you chop squares and to the beat of like really terrible EDM music. And Dani watches porn.
But they're both flow state activities.
They are.
Flow state. Yeah, and I would argue that they're both just a bit erotic. I love smashing things. I think there are people out there who could relate to the rush and the feel that is. Yep, smash porn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're talking a lot about what I would call like unconventional sources of eroticism and pleasure and kinkiness, and I think that in itself, just kind of recognizing and giving value and giving space to the things in your life that are not just like PIV sex, that connect you with erotic energy, is in itself healing. To allow yourself to break out of the mold of what you're expected to find pleasurable. And I think to me, it's healing because it's validating of your internal experience and of whatever, your brain chemistry is, your socialized self. It's all really complex, and we can find these little pockets of belonging in a whole bunch of different sensations. And I think that's the beauty of kink is like, yeah, let's find all of those pockets, no matter how weird they are.
Yeah. Okay, so there was one thing that we didn't mention, and then we also do have a question submitted. So one of the things we're looking at is like inside and outside of the world of kink and the way that it's viewed. And one of the things that like comes up constantly is the way that kink is portrayed in popular media. So I know we talked about like the fantasy versus the reality, which I loved that phrasing. Can you just share a bit about like how how that shows up and, you know, how it actually differs from what we see on TV.
Well,
Uh-oh.
Sort of, yeah. Well, I think what I hear you talking about is sort of like the 50 Shades of Grey problem, and sort of like
Yeah.
how what's portrayed as kinky and sexy on TV is not like the best kink practices, and isn't always like it's not always consensual, and it's like, and it, when you're looking at it,
Can we call them the worst kink practices?
yeah, I mean, and because of that, people watching that can be like, well, I don't want that in my life, which is like, yeah, fair enough, I don't want that in my life either. That's like, I think, you know, like, I think a lot of people find that sexy, and there is a problem, I think, with kind of like, it's like when professional wrestling became big and people started jumping off their garage roofs and hitting each other with chairs and like go to the hospital. And it's like, I think they're saying the same problem with kink. It's like there is some people trying it that way, and that's not good. So, which is why there are kink communities, which is why there's kink education, like Topping Book and the Bobbing Book. I highly recommend. Those are great books by
Janet Hardy and Dossie Houston.
Yeah.
Like, well, let's get those in the chat as a resource.
Okay.
Oh, no, not you.
I was like, I want
it. Could you repeat them again so that we make sure we actually have it?
Yeah, it's a companion series, the Topping Book and the Bobbing Book. And it's really great because if you're in a dynamic, you can sort of read the same content, but from two different perspectives. There's so many resources out there. I can't name all of the good kink books, and I can't name all the good kink communities, but you know, there's online communities and there's communities in person, depending on where you live. And for me, navigating community is hard. That's part of my autism. So I've had to lean on books and chat rooms and things like that to learn. But yeah, like don't learn kink from 50 Shades of Grey. And if you're like, and I would just like encourage people that maybe have ruled out kink for themselves because they've seen kink portrayed on a movie in a way that seems not in line with their values. Like, know that kink needs to align with your value. You create kink for yourself, and you create it within your values.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, you know, the way that kink is portrayed or dynamics are portrayed on social media, it's the same deal. You know, 50 Shades of Grey is one extreme example, but when you're seeing a DS dynamic wherever, you know, on social media, there is that's like the surface, and that's the performance, the performative aspect, which is fun and important, and really builds community, you know, to put on the performance of your dynamic. And still there's probably a lot, or there should be a lot going on underneath the surface that you're not seeing, you know, in the hour that you see like a particular performance.
Okay, so we have a question that came in, and this points back to your work. So we'll share about this and then a little bit more about the work you do before we wrap. So much of your gear is financially inaccessible for the average or low income person, as most handmade kink gear is. In what ways can kink and leather producers do more to make gear more available to all who wish to participate, especially marginalized folk?
Yeah, for sure. Like to be honest, like when we started this to make this something that would work for our lifestyle, something that we could,
Can you speak up a little bit?
we started this as something that would work for us, for something that would work for us to have jobs doing this. And we've been trying to figure out how to build a business model that works for that. And this has been brought up to us before, and I think about it a lot actually. Like, how do we make sure that we're not just catering to the wealthy? Because that's not what I want to do. That's not my mission. And so some ideas that we've had, and we're a couple years into this, and definitely have some ideas that we'll be rolling out over the next year or two. But some things we've talked about are like putting out DIY kits, like making it so we can laser cut leather and send it out and let you put it together. Because it's like, I can't spend time sewing for cheaper. Like, that's not how I can, that's not my mission. But what I can do is I can try to make it so where I'm not the one sewing it. I'll let you do the hand sewing, and I'm just going to send you the leather that's been laser cut, and so you get used of our tools, but you get to do the machine work.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So those types of things can be done. And there also are a lot of DIY resources. Like I know there are subreddits on like DIY BDSM gear, and I started this because I was making my own gear, because for me, I do make my own gear for me, and like that's really important that I make my own gear. It's a spiritual thing for me.
Yeah.
And so this business is me getting to make that for other people too, and have me be supported on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so both the DIY and the providing, I think the leather community can provide more resources to DIYers on how to make it more accessible, and I'd like to be doing that.
I love it. I love it.
And I think, we also really embrace trading and non-financial ways of, getting this material and these tools into people's hands, whether that's modeling with us, or we have trading. We do like SEO work with somebody in our community, and we're trading, for that. So there, as people, like we want to embrace non-financial, non-capitalist, ways of helping each other and getting our needs met. So for those who can afford it financially, that is great. And I think, there's a lot of flexibility with us. And I think a lot of makers, who are just people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that comes up a lot. I have one of our models who's also one of my partners, who has done a lot of lingerie modeling, has worked with a lot of the lingerie makers, like very directly, and you don't realize that you can actually talk to makers directly and just send them an email most of the time and say like, hey, this is what's going on with me, like what can we do? And I'm highly motivated to find a solution.
I love it. I love it. That's one of the big parts that I think people miss out there, is that these are artisans and craftspeople. Like, what you're doing is it's detailed and it's an art form all on its own. So that's something to consider when you are going into spaces and looking at what's available for purchase. I love the fact that you offer the service trade conversation. Also, someone's looking at your website and they think they are like, the designs are beautiful, and they mention that paying in installments is something that you offer. So I think, yeah, I think that's also really huge for people who are like, how do I have this be accessible for me?
Yeah. And, like truthfully, we want it to be accessible to the customers, and we need it to be accessible to us as well. And,
Yep.
I want to pay I want to be able to like pay the makers that I'm a consumer from fully. And for anyone who can't afford like a $300 paddle, I get it, I really do. And I wish we could all. In fact, I wish it wasn't even a thing.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is never mind, I lost it.
It's all good. You deserve every penny, and as a crafts person, it's really beautiful to see your work and to be around what you do. I mean, it's special. It's more than just your average set of gear. Like I've sold the plastic made things, and I've come across so many things that are very, I guess, standard. And what you're doing is quite special and unique. So I think that's one of the beautiful things that people also need to know.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
Thank you.
It's good to hear that feedback. I mean, we started this in the pandemic, and we've been like, it's always really good to get out and talk to people and get feedback, because it's soul work.
Yes. Soul work. Because like they're buying a little piece of you, and the heart you put into it.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Do you have any resources, anything that you want to share with our listeners before we wrap up?
Well, definitely encourage anybody to go check out our Instagram. We do a lot on there. We it's the content side of things is another big part of what we do. Like meeting up with content creators and models and doing really elaborate content. And it's a deep form of expression for both us and the people we're working with. So please check us out. And Sabersmyth is spelled SMYTH.
SABER.
The whole thing. SABERSMYTH.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was great. Okay, we're definitely going to get that up there. Okay, so we'll answer some of these. We'll answer some of these questions in the after chat. So definitely check out the Patreon if you have anything that hasn't been asked or responded to yet that you want to get in. Please get access to the after chat, and we'll continue these conversations there. We're gonna go ahead and wrap the show. Thank you both so much for being here. Stick around for the after chat, and I'm gonna go ahead and close us out. Thank you, everybody, for listening today. The ItCast is our community outreach podcast that increases diversity in conversations on health and sexuality. Through this work, we are creating a world where all people feel loved, honored, and respected. Our events coming up this season, we have The Chase, November 4th through 7th. You can learn more at thechase.pet. And we also have the Global Sexual Health and Freedom Summit coming February 4th and 5th, 2023. Early bird tickets will be coming October 15th. So go over to sexhealthsummit.com and RSVP. Get one-on-one coaching with me by visiting our link tree. Remember, you can ask us anything. Bye.